Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Crossroads Stories. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Better than the guy in today's story, at least. Today, we're hearing from William. Now, William is living what most of us would call the dream. He's a retired American architect who packed up his life, left the stress behind, and moved to the beautiful, tropical paradise of Thailand. You'd think sipping coconut water by the beach would mean a drama-free life, right? Wrong. William sent in a story that is going to make your blood boil just a little bit. It's the classic tale of the grass is greener, featuring a wife who claimed William was the anchor holding her back from greatness. Spoiler alert, sometimes that anchor is the only thing keeping you from drifting out to sea and sinking. She wanted the high life. She wanted excitement. And she told William he was just too boring and safe to understand her brilliance. Well, she definitely found some excitement, but not exactly the kind she put on her vision board. Before we jump into William's roller coaster of a life, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button if you think loyalty still matters, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Here is his story in his own words. They say that when you retire, you're supposed to slow down. You're supposed to buy a rocking chair, watch the sunset, and stop worrying about the structural integrity of skyscrapers. That was my plan, anyway. I'm William, 55 years old, and for 30 years, I worked as an architect in Chicago. My life was steel beams, wind loads, and clients who wanted Rome built in a day on a shoestring budget. I made my money, I made my name, and then I got out while I still had my hair and my sanity. I moved to Bangkok 3 years ago. If you've never been, it's an assault on the senses in the best way possible. The heat hits you like a wet blanket, the street food smells like heaven, and the traffic looks like a synchronized disaster. It was chaotic, but it was alive. And in the middle of that chaos, I found Talia. Talia was 28, a local Thai woman with a smile that could stop traffic on Succumbit Road. She was vibrant, full of energy, and completely different from the uptight corporate women I'd dated back in the States. We met at an art gallery opening. I was critiquing the lighting. She was critiquing the wine. We laughed, we talked, and despite the age gap, we clicked. Or so I thought. We got married a year later. I wasn't naive. I knew people whispered. Older American guy, younger Thai wife, we know how this story goes. But I didn't care. I loved her. I wanted to give her the world. I bought us a penthouse overlooking the Chao Phraya River. It was a fortress of glass and marble, high above the noise of the city. I thought I was giving her a sanctuary. She would later tell me I had put her in a cage. Talia fancied herself a fashion designer. And to be fair, she had taste. She had an eye for fabrics, for colors. When we got married, she told me her dream was to run her own boutique. I didn't just nod and smile. I wrote the check. I leased a beautiful space for her in a trendy district, paid for the renovations, and covered the inventory costs. I was happy to do it. Seeing her eyes light up when she cut the ribbon on Talia's silks was worth every penny. But the thing about ambition is that it's like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. It started on a Monday night. We were having dinner at a rooftop restaurant, the kind where the appetizer costs more than a used Honda. The city was glowing below us, a carpet of golden lights. Talia was picking at her sea base, her phone buzzing incessantly next to her plate. "You're distracted," I said, pouring more wine. "Is everything okay at the shop?" She sighed, a dramatic, heavy exhale that I was starting to hear more often. "The shop is fine, William. It's just small." "Small?" I frowned. "Talia, you've been open for 8 months. You're turning a small profit. That's a miracle in this economy. You should be proud." "I don't want a small profit," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "I want a legacy. I want a flagship store in the Icon District. I saw a space today. It's massive, William. 3 floors. Glass frontage. It's perfect." I put my fork down. The Icon District. That was prime real estate. The rent alone would be astronomical, easily 10 times what she was paying now. "Talia, honey," I started using my calmest business voice, the one I used to use on panic clients. "We've talked about this. Scaling up takes time. You need to build a loyal customer base first. If you move to a place with that kind of overhead, the pressure will be immense. One bad month and you're underwater." "It's not about the money," she hissed, lowering her voice as a waiter walked by. It's about the image. You have to spend money to make money. You have the capital, William. I know you do. You just don't want to spend it on me. I felt a headache forming behind my eyes. I have the capital because I was careful with it. I have a bond maturing next year that we agreed was for our future, for our retirement security. I'm not liquidating a stable asset to gamble on a retail space that costs $50,000 a month in rent. It's reckless. She looked at me like I had just slapped her. Reckless? We're just too big for you. You're so American, so practical. You think small, William. That's why you retired. You got tired of winning. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I retired because I won enough. I'm trying to protect you, Talia. If this expansion fails, it could bankrupt the business. You mean it could dent your bank account? She corrected, leaning back and crossing her arms. You're holding me back. You always do. You put me in this nice apartment, you buy me nice clothes, but you don't want me to actually be someone. You want a doll, a pretty little wife who stays in her small shop and waits for you to come home. That is not fair, I said, my voice hardening. I built that shop for you. I support you every day, but I will not fund a suicide mission for your vanity. Vanity? She stood up, throwing her napkin on the table. You think my dreams are vanity? You're an old man, William. You look at the world and see risk. I look at the world and see opportunity. Maybe that's a problem. We're not in the same timeline anymore. Where are you going? I asked, not bothering to stand up. I was too tired for the theatrics. I'm going to meet some friends, she said, grabbing her clutch. People who understand that art requires courage. Talia, sit down. Let's finish dinner. Enjoy your sea base, William. It's safe. Just like you. She stormed off toward the elevator, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. Heads turned. I sat there, surrounded by the beautiful view, the expensive wine, and the empty chair. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted sour. I told myself it was just a fight. Couples fight about money. Couples fight about business. She was young. She was hungry for success, and she was frustrated. She'd cool down. She'd come home, realize the math didn't add up, and we'd compromise. Maybe we'd look for a slightly bigger shop, something in the middle. I didn't know it then, but that empty chair wasn't just a result of an argument. It was a preview of my life to come. And while I was sitting there worrying about rent and overheads, Talia was already heading toward a friend who was offering her a currency I couldn't compete with, validation. I paid the bill, tipped the waiter way too much because I felt guilty for the scene, and took a taxi home. The apartment was quiet. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the chaotic traffic of Bangkok, a river of red taillights flowing into the dark. I felt a knot in my stomach. It wasn't the food. It was the instinct I had honed over 30 years of navigating cutthroat corporate politics. The foundation was cracking. I just couldn't see the fracture lines yet. The days following our discussion at the rooftop restaurant were characterized by a silence so heavy you could almost weigh it on a scale. You know the kind of silence I'm talking about. It's not peaceful. It's the silence of a soldier waiting for a landmine to go off. Talia didn't move out, and she didn't scream. Instead, she drifted. She became a ghost in her own home. I'd wake up, and she'd already be gone, leaving a trail of perfume and a half-empty cup of coffee. When she came home, usually long after the sun had gone down, she treated me with the polite indifference you offer a doorman. How was your day? I'd ask, trying to bridge the gap. Productive, she'd say, not making eye contact, her thumbs dancing across her phone screen like she was defusing a bomb. And that phone, good Lord, that phone. It became an extension of her hand. She smiled at it more than she had smiled at me in 6 months. Soft, secretive smiles. The kind of smiles that make a husband's stomach churn. Then came the smells. Now, I'm a man who enjoys a cigar, maybe twice a year. Usually when a friend has a baby or I manage to navigate Bangkok traffic without swearing. But Talia started coming home smelling like she'd been locked in a humidor with a chimney sweep. It was a mix of stale cigar smoke and a cologne that smelled expensive and aggressive, something like sandalwood and desperation. You've been smoking? I asked one night as she walked past me, the scent trailing behind her like a red flag. It was a networking event, William, she said, waving a hand dismissively. Everyone smokes. It's the atmosphere. You wouldn't understand. The air conditioning was broken. In a five-star hotel lounge, the AC was broken. You asked too many questions, she snapped, closing the bathroom door. It kills the creative vibe. Ah, yes, the vibe. That was her new favorite word. Everything was about energy, vibrations, and synergy. Logic was out. Vibes were in. A few days later, the name finally dropped. We were in the living room. I was reading a book, or pretending to, and she was pacing back and forth, radiating nervous energy. I met someone, she said. My heart stopped for a second, then rebooted. Excuse me. Professionally, William. Relax, she rolled her eyes. His name is Leo. He's an investor. A visionary, really. He's not like the bankers you used to hang out with. He understands the modern market. He thinks Talia's Silks has global potential. Leo. I repeated, tasting the name. It sounded like the kind of name a guy gives himself because Steve wasn't cool enough. And what is Leo's background? Venture capital? Private equity? He's an influencer investor, she said, as if that was a real job title that appeared on tax returns. He connects brands with the future. He wants to help me expand. He says I'm sitting on a gold mine, but I'm too afraid to dig. I see. And how much of a percentage does this visionary want for his help? He doesn't want money, William. He wants to empower me. He says creators need to be unleashed. I almost laughed. I really did. In my 30 years of business, I have never met a man who wanted to unleash a beautiful woman's business for free. Men like that want a return on investment, and usually the currency isn't cash. I'd like to meet him, I said, closing my book. If he's going to be involved in your business, I should vet him. I can look at his portfolio, see if his numbers match his mouth. Talia actually recoiled. Absolutely not. Why not? If he's legitimate, he won't mind a due diligence check. Because you'll ruin it, she cried out. You'll sit there with your grim face and ask him about profit margins and liabilities and bonds. You'll bore him to death, William. Leo operates on passion. He says you have to feel the deal. You're too negative. You're bad energy. I was bad energy. I was the guy paying the mortgage on the penthouse she was sleeping in, but I was the bad energy. Fine, I said. I won't meet him. But be careful, Talia. If it sounds too good to be true, it's usually a Ponzi scheme or a trap. You're just jealous, she muttered, grabbing her purse. You're jealous because someone else sees my worth. She left again. I didn't hire a private investigator. I didn't need to. I spent 3 decades reading blueprints. I know when a structure is unsound. I know when a wall is load-bearing and when it's just a facade. My marriage was becoming a facade. 2 days later, on a Friday afternoon, I decided to do some field research. I told Talia I was going to play golf, a sport I detest, by the way, purely because chasing a small ball in 95-degree heat seems like a punishment for past sins. Instead of the golf course, I took a taxi to her boutique. I walked in, the bell chiming cheerfully above the door. The shop was empty of customers. Her assistant, a sweet girl named Knock, jumped about a foot in the air when she saw me. She looked like a deer staring down a Mack truck. Mr. William, she squeaked. We weren't expecting you. Clearly, I said, smiling my best benevolent old guy smile. Is Talia in the back? I wanted to surprise her with lunch. Knock's eyes darted to the left, then the right, then at her shoes. Oh, no. Miss Talia is out. Out? A supplier meeting? Yes. Knock nodded vigorously. Yes, supplier. Fabric. Very important. Silk. Which supplier? I can drive over and pick her up. I don't know, she blurted out. She didn't say. She just said meeting. With Mr. Leo. Mr. Leo. I nodded slowly. Did she say where? Knock looked like she was about to cry. I felt bad for the kid. She was loyal, but she was a terrible liar. I think the Grand Pearl Hotel. The lounge. Thank you, Knock. Keep up the good work. I walked out, my blood running cold despite the heat. The Grand Pearl. That wasn't a place for fabric suppliers. That was a place for $500 high teas and afternoon trysts. I took another taxi. The ride felt like an eternity. I sat there rehearsing what I would say. Maybe they were just talking business. Maybe I was just a jealous old man. Exactly like she said. Maybe Leo really was just a guy who loved fashion and hated due diligence. I walked into the lobby of the Grand Pearl. It was magnificent. High ceilings, chandeliers the size of small cars, and tourists pretending they belonged there. I scanned the lounge. Nothing. I sat in a wingback chair near the elevators, hidden behind a large potted palm. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a character in a bad noir movie. The case of the retired architect and the cheating wife. 20 minutes passed. I was about to convince myself I was crazy and go home. Then the elevator doors dinged. They walked out. I recognized Talia immediately, of course. She was wearing a red dress I had bought her for our anniversary. And next to her was Leo. He was exactly what I expected, and yet somehow worse. He was younger than me, maybe 30. He was wearing a suit that was too tight, loafers with no socks, and sunglasses indoors. He looked like he sold courses on how to get rich by dropshipping air. But it wasn't his clothes that broke me. It was their body language. They weren't walking like business partners. There was no polite distance. They were glued together. His arm was around her waist, his hand resting possessively on her hip, fingers splayed. Talia was leaning into him, looking up at him with an expression of total, blind adoration. She laughed at something he said, a genuine, head-thrown-back laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in months. Then, right there in the lobby, he stopped. He turned her toward him, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was a claim, and she didn't pull away. She melted. I sat behind that palm tree, watching my wife kiss a man who looked like he checked his crypto portfolio during funerals. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. I felt a profound, hollow ache in my chest. It was the feeling of watching a building collapse in slow motion, knowing exactly why the foundation failed, but being powerless to stop the gravity. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was replacing me. And the worst part? She looked happy. I stayed in the chair until they walked out the front doors and got into a flashy sports car that the valet brought around. I didn't confront them. Not there. I wasn't going to make a scene in a hotel lobby. I was William. I was dignified. But as I watched that car peel away, leaving a cloud of exhaust in the humid air, I knew the dignity was about to end. The architect was done. It was time for the demolition crew. There's a specific cinematic trope where the betrayed husband sits in a dark room, nursing a glass of scotch, waiting for the cheating wife to come home. I always thought it was melodrama. I thought, who actually sits in the dark? Just turn on a lamp and read a magazine. But there I was, sitting in the dark. No scotch, just a glass of lukewarm water because I needed to keep a clear head, and the lights off because I couldn't bear to see the apartment we built together. It felt less like a home and more like a crime scene. It was 11:30 p.m. when the lock clicked. Talia breezed in, bringing a gust of humidity and that sandalwood cigar stench with her. She was humming, actually humming. She kicked off her heels near the door, something I usually picked up after her, but tonight they could stay there. She flicked the light switch. The sudden brightness was aggressive. When she saw me sitting in the armchair facing the door, she jumped, clutching her chest. "Jesus, William," she gasped. "Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Why are you sitting in the dark like a gargoyle?" "I was enjoying the view," I said, my voice sounding calm, almost robotic. "The city looks different when you know what's happening in the shadows." She rolled her eyes, walking past me toward the kitchen. "You're being weird again. Did you eat?" "I'm starving." The meeting went late. "The meeting," I repeated. "With the fabric supplier?" "Yes, the fabric supplier," she called out, opening the fridge. "He's difficult, very specific about weave counts. We had to go over the contracts line by line." "Does he always kiss his clients in the lobby of the Grand Pearl? Or was that a special clause in the contract?" The refrigerator door didn't close. It just stayed open, the hum of the motor the only sound in the room. Talia slowly shut the door and turned around. The playful, tipsy demeanor was gone. Her face was a mask of cold porcelain. "You followed me," she said. "Not a question, an accusation." "I didn't have to follow you far," I said, standing up. My knees popped. Great timing, body. Way to remind her I'm the old guy. "I went to the shop to surprise you. You weren't there. Knock told me where you were. I saw you, Talia. I saw the hand on the waist. I saw the kiss. I saw the way you looked at him. I expected tears. I expected denial. I expected the classic, 'It's not what it looks like.' Instead, she laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. She walked over to the counter and poured herself a glass of wine, her hands steady. "You know what, William," she said, taking a sip. "I'm glad you saw. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of tiptoeing around your fragile ego." "My ego?" I blinked. "You're sleeping with a man who wears sunglasses indoors, and you're worried about my ego? Don't you dare talk about him like that," she snapped, slamming the glass down. Wine sloshed onto the marble counter. "Leo understands me. Leo sees the fire in me. You've been trying to put that fire out since the day we met. You put me in this golden cage." She gestured wildly at the penthouse. The penthouse with the panoramic view and the Italian furniture. "I gave you a home," I said. "I gave you a business. I gave you stability." "I don't want stability," she screamed, her face flushing red. "I'm 28 years old, William. I don't want to be safe. I want to be electric. You held me back. You made me small. Don't expand, Talia. Save your money, Talia. Be careful, Talia. You treat me like a child because you're terrified that if I actually become successful, I won't need you anymore." The accusation hit me harder than the infidelity. "I told you to be careful because business is brutal," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "I was trying to stop you from driving off a cliff. And Leo is building me a plane," she countered. "He believes in me. He's going to invest 5 million baht into the brand. We're going to Paris. We're going to Milan. He says I have a vision that could change the industry. You never told me that. You just told me to check the profit margins. Because I was your husband, not your cheerleader." I shouted back. "I loved you enough to tell you the truth. Leo is selling you a fantasy, Talia. He's a con artist in a polyester suit. He is a visionary," she spat. "And he makes me feel alive. When I'm with him, I feel like a CEO. When I'm with you, I feel like a nursemaid in a retirement home." That one stung. I took a breath, smoothing down my shirt. I needed to regain control. "Okay, so that's it. 6 years of marriage. And you're leaving because I balanced the checkbook and he bought you a dream?" "I'm leaving because I outgrew you," she said coldly. "I'm packing a bag. I'm going to Leo's. He has a villa in Thonglor. A real place for young people. Not this mausoleum." She marched into the bedroom. I didn't stop her. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her pack. It was chaotic. She threw silk blouses, designer shoes, and jewelry into a Louis Vuitton duffel bag. All things I bought her, by the way. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. "The only mistake I made was thinking you could handle a woman like me," she said, zipping the bag with a violent yank. She grabbed her phone, the lifeline to Leo. She walked to the front door, her heels clicking on the floor for the last time. She paused with her hand on the handle. "I'll send for the rest of my things once the lawyers talk," she said, not looking back. "And don't worry about the shop. Leo is buying out your share. We don't need your money anymore." "Talia," I said. She turned, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Make sure the check clears before you sign anything," I said. She scoffed. "You're pathetic. Enjoy your silence, William." The door slammed. The sound echoed through the large, empty apartment. I stood there for a long time. I looked at the wine stain on the counter. I looked at the view of the city that was currently swallowing my wife whole. She said I held her back. She said I was a cage. I walked over to the window and looked down at the streets below. Somewhere out there, she was rushing into the arms of a man who promised her the moon. "Good luck, Talia," I whispered to the glass. "I have a feeling you're going to need more than luck where you're going." I turned off the lights and went to bed. I thought I would cry or scream or throw a vase against the wall. But honestly, I just felt tired and, in a strange, twisted way, relieved. The demolition was over. Now I just had to sweep up the rubble. After Talia walked out, the penthouse didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like an expensive storage unit for my regrets. Every time I looked at the kitchen counter, I saw the ghost of a wine stain. Every time I looked at the floor-to-ceiling windows, I remembered her calling it a golden cage. I realized I didn't hate the apartment. I hated what it represented. It was a monument to a failed project. So I did what any rational man in my position would do. I liquidated the asset. I sold the penthouse 3 weeks later to a British tech mogul who thought the marble floors were smashing. I made a tidy 20% profit. I'm sure Talia would have called it blood money or bad vibes, but my bank account didn't seem to mind the negative energy. I was done with Bangkok. The city was too loud, too fast, and frankly, it had too many rooftop bars. I needed silence. I needed a place where the biggest source of stress was whether the tide was coming in or going out. I moved to Hua Hin, a quiet coastal town about 3 hours south. It's a place known for two things: the king's summer palace and retired Europeans walking small dogs. It was perfect. Now, I know what you're thinking. William, you can't buy land in Thailand. You're a foreigner. You're absolutely right. I'm an architect. I read the fine print. I didn't buy the land. I signed a 30-year lease on a beautiful plot of dirt and bought the structure sitting on top of it. It's called a leasehold, and it's the only smart way to do it without setting up some shady shell company. See, I was still playing it safe, and I loved it. My life became aggressively simple. I woke up at 6 a.m., not because an alarm, but because the birds were screaming at each other. I drank coffee that I brewed myself. No barista, no oat milk, just hot bean water. I started drawing again. Not blueprints for skyscrapers, but watercolors of the ocean. It was boring, just as Talia had predicted. And God, it was peaceful. But even in paradise, you can't entirely escape the signal noise. I hadn't blocked Talia. I told myself it was for legal reasons. We had a divorce to finalize, but a small, masochistic part of me wanted to see if the visionary Leo had delivered her to the promised land. Plus, Nak, her assistant at the boutique, kept calling me. She was my spy, although I don't think she realized it. Mr. William, she'd whisper over the phone, usually hiding in the stockroom. Miss Talia is different. She barely comes in. She says Mr. Leo is handling the macro strategy now. Macro strategy? I chuckled, sketching a fishing boat. That sounds expensive, Nak. It is. She drained the operating account yesterday. She said it was for the deposit on the Icon District store. But Mr. William, the lease is in her name. Only her name. Mr. Leo said his funds are tied up in offshore transfers for tax reasons. The classic funds are tied up maneuver. It's the business equivalent of my dog ate my homework. It's amazing how many self-proclaimed millionaires have banking problems that can only be solved by using their girlfriend's savings. Through Knock and the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I pieced together Talia's new life. It looked spectacular on Instagram. There she was, posing on the hood of a neon green Lamborghini rental. There she was, clinking champagne glasses on a yacht charter. She looked beautiful, I'll give her that. But if you zoomed in, and yes, I zoomed in, you could see the strain. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. It was a performance. Leo, it turned out, was not just an investor. He was a creative director. Or rather, a dictator. He started showing up at the shop, criticizing Talia's designs. Too old-fashioned, he'd say, according to Knock. Nobody wants elegance, babe. They want viral. Make it tighter. Make it shorter. Talia, the woman who once lectured me about the integrity of her art, was now designing glorified swimwear because Leo told her it would break the internet. She was dismantling her dream to feed his ego. Then came the divorce papers. My lawyer, a sharp Thai woman named Kanya, who scared me more than Talia ever did, handled it. We sent the papers electronically. I expected a fight. I expected Talia to come after my pension, the bond, the profit from the apartment sale. I was ready to go to war to protect my retirement. But she didn't fight. She signed everything within 24 hours. Kanya called me, sounding baffled. She didn't even contest the lack of alimony, William. She just signed. She included a note. Let me guess, I said. She doesn't eat my crumbs? Close. She wrote, keep your change. I'm going to be a billionaire by Christmas. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my paintbrush. A billionaire. By Christmas. It was August. Unless Leo was planning to rob the Federal Reserve or invent a time machine, I liked my odds of remaining the wealthier party. But there was a darker side to it. By rushing the divorce, Talia had severed her only safety net. She had waived her rights to support because she was so convinced that Leo was her winning lottery ticket. She had bet the house, literally and metaphorically, on a man who wore sunglasses inside a hotel lobby. A week after the papers were finalized, I got a text from her. It was a photo of a diamond ring. A gaudy, Oversized thing that looked like it came from a gumball machine, though I'm sure Leo told her it was a rare, conflict-free diamond from Mars. Caption: Upgrade. I didn't reply. I put my phone down, walked out to my garden, and watched a gecko climb up the wall. You see that, buddy? I asked the gecko. That's what freedom looks like. The gecko blinked. He seemed to agree. I was free, legally, physically, and financially free. But as I listened to the waves crashing in the distance, I felt a pang of pity. I knew the architecture of a scam. I knew the load-bearing limits of a lie. Talia was building a skyscraper on a swamp, and the ground was already starting to sink. I just hoped she knew how to swim, because the tide was coming in fast. December arrived in Thailand. For those of you who haven't experienced a tropical Christmas, it's a confusing time. The malls blast jingle bells, plastic snowmen melt in the 90-degree heat, and tourists wear Santa hats while sweating through their linen shirts. I spent Christmas morning in my garden with a cup of coffee and a papaya I'd picked from my own tree. It was peaceful. It was quiet. I couldn't help but remember Talia's parting note. I'm going to be a billionaire by Christmas. I checked the Forbes list. Surprisingly, her name wasn't there. I checked the stock market. No major shifts caused by a revolutionary Thai silk brand. However, around 2 p.m., I did get a notification. It wasn't from Bloomberg. It was from Knock. My phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it rang. I answered. Merry Christmas, Knock. Mr. William. She was sobbing. Not the polite, stifled crying she usually did when she made a mistake with an invoice. This was full-blown, hyperventilating panic. It's gone. It's all gone. Slow down, I said, putting my coffee down. What's gone? The shop. Everything. The landlord came today. He put chains on the door. He said rent hasn't been paid in 3 months. He said Miss Talia owes him 500,000 baht. I frowned. That's impossible. Talia emptied the operating account in August. She had plenty of cash to cover rent for a year, even if sales were zero. No, Mr. William, she gave it to him. To Leo. Yes. Mr. Leo said he needed it for the down payment on the Icon District flagship. He said it was a bridge loan until his offshore funds cleared. He took the money, Mr. William. And today we went to the Icon District to see the new store. I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what was coming. Let me guess, I said. There is no store. The manager of the building laughed at us. Knock wailed. He said he met a man named Leo once, 6 months ago, but he never put down a deposit. He never signed a lease. Mr. William, where's the money? The money is currently sitting in a crypto wallet in the Cayman Islands. Knock. Or maybe it's being spent on bottle service in Macau. We went to Mr. Leo's house in Thong Lor, she continued, sniffling. The big mansion with the pool? The guard wouldn't let us in. He said Mr. Leo moved out last night. And, Mr. William, the guard said it was an Airbnb. A rental. He paid week to week. I let out a long, slow breath. The visionary. The investor. The man who was going to take my wife to Paris. He was basically a high-end squatter with a good Instagram filter. Where's Talia now? I asked. She's sitting on the curb outside the old shop. Knock whispered. She won't speak. She just stares at her phone. But Mr. Leo deleted his account. He blocked her on everything. Mr. William. She has nothing. She can't even pay me my salary. I'll pay your salary, Knock, I said immediately. I'll wire to you today. You didn't do anything wrong. Thank you, sir, she wept. But what about Miss Talia? I looked out at my garden. The frangipani flowers were in full bloom, white and yellow against the green leaves. It was paradise. And 3 hours north, my ex-wife was sitting on a dirty sidewalk in Bangkok, realizing she had burned down her castle to buy a tent from a con man. Talia wanted to be independent, I said softly. She wanted to be the CEO of her own life. This is what that looks like when you fire your only safety net. Should I tell her to call you? No, I said. She knows my number. If she wants to call, she can call. But Knock, tell her to check that diamond ring he gave her. The upgrade? Yeah, tell her to take it to a pawn shop. I have a feeling she's going to need the bus fare. I hung up. I didn't feel happy. I want to make that clear. I didn't pump my fist and shout yes. I felt a deep, heavy sadness. I had built Talia's silks with my own hands. I had designed the logo. I had negotiated the original lease. Watching it collapse because a grifter in a tight suit promised her the moon. It was like watching someone crash a car you spent years restoring. I went online. I couldn't resist. I checked Talia's Instagram. The billionaire bio was gone. The photos of the Lamborghini were gone. The photos of Leo were gone. Her last post was from 3 days ago. It was a picture of a champagne glass with the caption, "Big things coming." #Empire. The comments were now turned off. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, my first in months. I toasted the empty air. To the empire, I said. A few days passed. The silence from Bangkok was deafening. I imagined the reality setting in. The realization that the offshore funds were never coming. The realization that the business trips Leo took were probably just him scouting his next victim. And the worst realization of all, that the boring husband who wanted to save money and grow slowly wasn't holding her back. He was the only thing keeping her from falling off the edge of the world. She had traded a man who would have died for her for a man who wouldn't even pay her rent. I sat by my pool, listening to the birds, and waited. I knew the call would come. Desperation has a way of dialing the past. I just wondered if she had enough shame left to hesitate, or if Leo had stolen that too. They say that bad news travels fast, but desperate ex-wives travel surprisingly slowly. It took Talia 3 weeks to find me. I was in my garden, pruning the bougainvillea. It's a thorny plant, beautiful but dangerous if you don't handle it with gloves. A lot like my marriage, actually. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was that perfect, piercing blue you only get in the tropics during the dry season. Then I heard it, the crunch of gravel. I didn't turn around immediately. I knew who it was. The gate to my villa was open because I was expecting a delivery of potting soil, not a delivery of regret. William. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. It lacked the sharp, demanding edge it had when she was lecturing me about vision and vibes. I turned around. If I were a better man, I might have felt a tug of heartbreak. But I'm a retired architect, and I look at structural damage objectively. Talia looked like a building that had been hit by a wrecking ball. She was wearing a simple dress, one of the few she owned before the upgrade. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, no expensive blowout. She wasn't wearing the fake diamond ring, and she had arrived in a pink, beat-up taxi that was currently idling outside, blowing black smoke into my pristine air. "Hello, Talia," I said, leaving my gardening gloves on. "You're a long way from the Icon District." She tried to smile, but her lip quivered. I needed to see you. I missed you. You missed me." I raised an eyebrow. "Or did you miss the air conditioning? It's hot out here." She took a step forward, tears already welling up in her eyes. "It was a good performance. Oscar-worthy, really. I made a mistake, William. A horrible mistake. You were right. You were right about everything." The 4 magic words every husband wants to hear. Usually they taste sweet. Today they just tasted like ash. "I know I was right," I said calmly. "I did the math. The math is always right. Leo, he's a monster," she sobbed, abandoning the brave face. "He stole everything. The money, the inventory, my pride. He left me with nothing. I'm staying in a hostel, William. A hostel, with backpackers who don't shower." "That sounds like an adventure," I said. "Very electric, very alive. Isn't that what you wanted? To get out of the museum and live in the real world?" "Don't be cruel," she whispered. "I was foolish. He manipulated me. He told me things I wanted to hear. But when I was sitting on that curb, all I could think about was you. How safe you made me feel. How you took care of me." She reached out to grab my hand. I stepped back. "I didn't take care of you, Talia. I partnered with you. There's a difference. And you didn't leave because Leo manipulated you. You left because you thought you were better than me. You thought I was a stepping stone, and you were ready to jump to the next rock. You just didn't realize the next rock was a hologram." "I can fix it," she pleaded, the desperation rising. "I can be the wife you wanted now. I'll cook. I'll stay home. We can be quiet. I hate the noise now, William. I just want to be here, with you, listening to the ocean." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't asking for love. She was asking for a bailout. She was a failed business looking for a merger to avoid bankruptcy. "Talia," I said, stripping off my gloves. "You sold the house. You burned the bridge. And then you nuked the ashes. We can rebuild." No, I shook my head. I'm retired. I'm done building. I'm just living now. And frankly, I like my life. I like my quiet mornings. I like my coffee. And I like knowing that the only person spending my money is me. So that's it. Her face hardened, a glimpse of the old Talia shining through. You just gonna let me rot? After 6 years. I'm not letting you rot. You're young. You're 29 now. That's prime time. You have your health. You have your fire. Go find a job. Go start over. Do it yourself this time. It'll be good for your character. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I took out 2,000 baht, about 60 bucks. What is this? She stared at the cash. Taxi fare, I said, holding it out. That driver looks impatient, and I don't think you have a meter money. Go back to Bangkok, Talia. The city is full of opportunity. Just stay away from the guys in sunglasses. She stared at the money, her pride warring with her poverty. Poverty won. She snatched the bills from my hand. I hate you, she hissed. I know, I smiled. But at least I'm real. That's more than you can say for Leo. She spun around and marched back to the pink taxi. She got in, slammed the door, and the car sputtered away, disappearing down the road in a cloud of dust. I stood there for a moment, listening to the engine fade. Then, silence returned. The birds started singing again. The ocean breeze rustled the frangipani leaves. I picked up my shears. I had a lot of pruning to do. The dead branches don't cut themselves away, after all. So there you have it. Talia wanted a billionaire lifestyle on an influencer budget. She traded a boring, stable architect for a flashy con artist. And she learned the hard way that not everything that glitters is gold. Sometimes it's just a cubic zirconia ring from a guy renting a mansion by the week. I'm still here in my villa. I paint, I swim, and occasionally I check the news to see if Leo has been arrested yet. As for Talia, I heard she's working at a hotel reception in Phuket. It's an honest job. Maybe she'll finally learn that building a life takes bricks and mortar, not just vibes and hashtags. If you enjoyed this story of justice, stupidity, and the sweet taste of freedom, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It costs less than a fake investment scheme. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. And remember, guys, if she says you're holding her back from her dreams, let her go. Just make sure you change the locks before she realizes her dream was a nightmare. I'm William, signing off from paradise. Stay safe, stay smart, and keep your receipts.